Imagine you're buying a new car. You walk into the dealership and all you see is a bunch of chassis in the showroom. The dealer then informs you that you need to choose which wheels to put on those chassis, what tires to put on the wheels, what engine to put in it, what steering wheel would you like. How would you feel about that experience? Likely you'd be a little irritated. You didn't come in wanting to decide every small component that goes into your car. You just wanted to drive off the lot. And now you're driving off without much confidence that what you have is a good, stable vehicle. How do you know if all those components are going to work well together? Now, this may seem a little far-fetched, but it's not that far off from the state we find ourselves in as developers today. When we start a new project, we get to choose the framework, we get to choose the ORM, the routing library, the test suite, how to lay out our project files, what configuration tools to use, and the list goes on and on and on. This can be exhausting and time-consuming, not to mention the bugs introduced by introducing the wrong third-party library to your project. So what's the answer? Well, it might just be using an opinionated framework. We all know these frameworks. They're very popular nowadays. Frameworks like Ruby on Rails, used by GitHub, Shopify, Airbnb, Django, used by Pinterest, Instagram, Bitbucket, Angular, used on the front end by Microsoft Office, by PayPal, by many Google services, and ASP.NET that's used by Microsoft, Stack Overflow, Ancestry.com, and several other major websites. And there are many more. In fact, you can find one in just about any language you're using today. These frameworks are called opinionated because they have opinions. They tell you the one right way to do things. They tell you where to put your files, where to put your services, your model files, your configuration files. They tell you exactly what that directory structure should look like. They tell you how to name things. A good example of this is your model classes for your database. Probably they'll tell you to name your models in singular Pascal case, and then those will map to plural snake case database tables. This prevents having to do configuration to tell it how to map these models to your database, having to tell the ORM what table to use for each and every model in your application. They also tell you how to do things, how to load and save data, how your database migration should work, how to do unit tests, how to do data validation, how to do logging for your app. All of this has been predefined by the framework, and they tell you how to build things. They tell you what your development environment should look like, how to start up a local dev server, how to build your app for production, and how to do all of this in CI/CD. All of this is built right into the framework and well documented. To some, this may seem like a lot of constraints, but with these constraints come a lot of benefits. For instance, we're faster to product. One of the main goals that we have as software engineers is to get to that MVP or alpha or beta as quickly as possible so that our customers and our users can see the value in the product we're building, and so that we can see it ourselves. If we're not worrying about the plumbing of our application, then we can get straight to product much faster. And then once we are in production, we have improved productivity going forward. We can just work on features instead of having to worry about how all these things link up together, how our ORM is going to work with our test suite, how our URL structure will work. How do we get to this page? We don't have to worry about any of that. We can just focus on the business logic, which is what actually matters to our users. And eventually, we're going to need to bring on new developers. Well, when we do, we have a simplified onboarding process because all we really have to do is point the developer to the official documentation for the framework. And right away, they know how to set up their dev environment. They know how we are using every component in the framework because there's only one way to do it. So if they just go through the tutorials or the documentation of that framework, we are confident that they're learning to use it the way that we're using it. And we have improved code quality. We all know how important code quality is in making our application maintainable, but it's also very difficult to get consistently good code quality. You're worried about two things, really: style and best practices being used throughout your application. Most of these frameworks have one style guide. You just follow that style guide and you'll have a consistent style throughout your application. And best practices are built right into the framework. You only have one way of doing things, and that way is the best practice. So with all these wonderful benefits, why isn't everyone using opinionated frameworks? Really, we hear two major complaints when talking about opinionated frameworks. The first thing we hear is that we need to be more flexible. Our use case is different than everyone else. No, it's not. Your use case is exactly the same as everyone else's use case. You're going to take user input, put it in the database or data store, read that data from the database, do some business logic, and display it back to the user. That's what every app in the history of software development has done. And these frameworks are built to do just that. They're built with everything you need for a CRUD application. The second common complaint we hear is, it's too bloated. I don't need all of these features. It's too heavy. But honestly, look at any medium to large scale project you've done. What features didn't you use? You need a routing engine, an ORM, a test suite, a view engine. You need all of this. The difference is that because it's all built in, you actually end up with a smaller finished product than if you took that piecemeal approach. Every library you bring in is going to bring in its own dependencies. But with these frameworks, because everything is one package, they're able to share dependencies across all of these features, making the resulting application much smaller. So what's the next step? Well, why not try using one of these frameworks in your next project? I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the efficiency and productivity that comes with an opinionated framework.